How much should you really expect to pay for your next Super Mini? £10,000? £12,000? More? What about a perfectly credible contender with more power and equipment for £3,000 to £4,000 less? That's the prospect served up by Kia's Rio. Too good to be true? Let's find out.
So, the Kia Rio Super Mini. Hardly a hugely significant or exciting car, you might think, but it is in one respect. That of illustrating just why the global car industry, and the UK car industry in particular, is in such a mess. Now, there are many reasons for this, but one of them I'd like to suggest is a frankly ridiculous pricing policy. Now, take this car. Though it's hardly state-of-the-art, it's quite good enough to satisfy most in its intended sector. Yet, it enjoys list prices anything between £3,000 and £6,000 less than market leaders like Ford's Fiesta. Now, that's quite a lot, wouldn't you say, before you started talking even discounts on a car with an average sector price of, say, £10,000, especially when you bear in mind that this Kia typically throws in more power and equipment into the bargain. No wonder the market leaders can't shift their stock. But haven't brands within the motor industry always offered us cheap cars, costing thousands less than mainstream models? Well, yes, they have, and in times past, we'd have always counselled you not to buy them. They were feeble to drive, they fell apart, and they lost all the money you'd saved up front when the time came to sell. Now, Kia's first generation Rio was exactly one of these, a dull, unlamented car that left us in 2005. And most expected more of the same from its replacement, a car designed far more for European tastes. They were wrong. Here's a Super Mini that offers everything that you need in this class of car and nothing you don't. And if values are a factor in your buying decision and you're not getting a screaming deal on something more interesting, we'd suggest that it's a car that's pretty hard to ignore. Now, okay, cards on the table. I wasn't expecting too much here. Perhaps I should have known better. I've been driving this car for a week now, and a couple of things have really surprised me. First of all, the build quality. No real squeaks or rattles despite the number of miles I've done, and the doors shut with a real quality thunk. Secondly, the power on offer. Now, I'm driving the 1.5 litre CRD diesel here. It's an engine with 20 brake horsepower more nearly than the fastest 1.6 litre TDCi Ford Fiesta. And although it isn't really any faster than that car, rest to 60 in about 11.5 seconds on the way to top speed of 110 miles an hour, it's got that extra torque, which means a more relaxing driving experience with fewer gear changes. Plus, it's up to £4,000 cheaper, but now we're getting back to price again. There are petrol Rio alternatives, of course, primarily the 96 brake horsepower 1.4 litre version that most customers choose. Plus, there's a minority interest 111 brake horsepower 1.6 litre unit, misleadingly titled Sport. Given the diesel's relative refinement and much superior fuel economy, though, we can't really think of a reason for Rio customers not to choose it, assuming they can twist their dealer's arm over the normal £1,000 diesel to petrol price premium. Handling is Super Mini's state-of-the-art circa 2005. The steering's a bit vague and there's a bit of body roll through the corners. Nothing you couldn't live with on the school run, though. Where the design does show its age is with the lack, even on the options list, of the kind of ESP stability control system that other rivals offer to get you out of trouble on slippery roads or if you enter a corner too fast. This Rio hails from an era when Kia's stylists weren't quite so hung up on aesthetics. Stick it next to their larger and more recently designed Seed family hatchback and it can look rather outdated. Now, many potential customers will walk away at this point and spend extra on something with a little more driveway cred. But is driveway cred really that important when the day-glow shine of new car ownership has worn off and you're on the daily shopping, school run, commuting grind? The Rio does, after all, have a clean, functional look that's not unappealing from some angles. Slip behind the wheel and you'll find firm, surprisingly supportive seats that sit you in front of nicely styled dials and very simple switchgear. As with Kia's smaller Picanto city car, if your brain can cope with the complexities of using something like a payphone, then it shouldn't struggle too much to understand the controls on offer here. Now, there's plenty of storage spaces dotted around the cabin. I particularly like the umbrella compartment that's positioned under the steering column here. At the back, rear head and legroom are well up to class standards, and there's a useful reclining function on the rear seats. The 270-litre boot is just about big enough for 4 people's carefully packed luggage, and the split folding rear seats have been designed properly so they fold forward almost flat, opening up 1,145 litres of capacity. Now, asking prices for this 5-door Rio are so cheap that you'll have to make sure you're comparing them with super minis, not smaller city cars. Now, you're looking at list figures anywhere between £7,000 and £11,000, which, as we said, is pretty cheap for a 5-door super mini with engines between 1.4 and 1.6 litres. Ask your friendly Ford or Vauxhall dealership for the same thing, and you're looking at asking prices starting at between £12,000 and £12,500. Even their entry-level 1-litre 5-door models have new car list prices set at 5 figures. Now, the Rio range is simple. Hatchbacks only and no 3-door option. You've got a choice of 1.4 and 1.6 litre petrol engines, the 1.4 with an optional 4-speed automatic transmission, plus this 1.5 litre diesel. Now, if you're looking for a more modern Korean alternative, Hyundai's i20 is a good bet. But even that car in 1.4 litre 5-door form is up to £3,000 more expensive than this one. Overall then, you're looking at a saving of between £3,000 and £5,000, depending on which comparable super mini you pitch this Rio against. Now, discounts from competitors will erode this, of course, but it's still pretty hard to question this Rio's value proposition. Standard equipment includes power steering, an MP3 compatible 4-speaker stereo, twin front airbags and anti-lock brakes with electronic brake force distribution to maximise their effectiveness. Air conditioning is standard on most models. And running costs? Well, there's Kia's impressive 7-year warranty to consider. That should help resale values. Fuel consumption, well, it's a few percentage points down on that you get in more modern rivals, but it's nothing to lose too much sleep over. You'll get 62.8 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle from this 1.5 litre diesel and 45.6 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle from the 1.4 litre petrol. In terms of CO2, you can expect to get between 139 and 145 grams per kilometre of CO2 for the petrols and 119 grams per kilometre from the diesel. Insurance groups, well, they range between 4 and 7 for the petrols and between 5 and 6 for the diesel. Sometimes car buyers just don't want to do the research. They want something that's going to be easy to buy, easy to maintain and easy to drive. They don't care about handling, soft touch plastics or 0 to 60 times. They just want a hassle-free experience, and that's exactly what's served up by the Kia Rio. Sensible looking and as practical as they come, this Rio is surprisingly good. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's an outstanding super mini, but I am pointing out that it's outstanding value for the money, thanks to prices that make those of mainstream rivals look frankly embarrassingly expensive. Now, if this is what Kia can do for this little, then its future looks bright.